So when it comes to recording guitars, there's plenty of different ways to get the sound out of your head and onto tape or into your DAW. Getting the sound right, getting the tone right, the performance, it's all an important part of this whole process. Now, one technique that producers and engineers have been using in recording studios for decades is what's called ReAmping. This is a great way to give yourself more options after you've recorded a part to get the sound exactly right on record. Now, this technique was once primarily used in studios, but it's becoming more popular with home players today, specifically people in the metal and the progressive community. So in today's video, we're gonna talk about it. I'm gonna show you how to reamp your guitar, talk about why you might wanna reamp your guitar at home, and also cover why I never reamp my guitars. It's not something I really ever do by choice, and I'll get into why in just a second. But before we go any further, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Sweetwater. Sweetwater is my go-to source online for all of my music gear needs. As a guitar player, it can be a little bit scary to buy a guitar online, sight unseen. Generally, you want to get your hands on it before you buy, but Sweetwater has a rigorous multi-point inspection process for almost all of the guitars that come through their inventory, so you can be sure that the guitar that shows up from Sweetwater is going to be in tip-top shape, set up and ready to play. We all know what it's like to go to some of the big box guitar stores and pick something up off the wall that's just been beat to death and sitting under hot lights for months, and it's just unplayable. That's not gonna happen with Sweetwater. And if you're a guitar player who's getting into recording at home and learning more about production techniques and the gear that you need to make great sounding records at home, Sweetwater has all your needs covered there as well. I'm gonna post some affiliate links in the description box from today's video of all the gear that we're using that was provided by Sweetwater, namely the ReAmp box that we're gonna talk about in just a second. And once again, thank you so much to Sweetwater for sponsoring today's video. With all that out of the way, let's take a look at this ReAmp box and talk about what reamping actually is. Now, as you can probably figure out from the name reamping, reamping is simply the act of taking a guitar signal, a guitar DI signal that you recorded into your DAW, and reamping it through a different amp or through a different effects chain, different signal chain. Basically taking a DI guitar performance and putting it through a different set of equipment to get a different sound. Now, there's several reasons why you would want to reamp your guitars. One would be you're just not happy with the way a specific sound came out while you were recording, and you're coming back to it days later and thinking, this isn't something I can fix with compression and EQ. I just feel like there's a different sound that needs to go here. Or if you wanted to stack two different amp tones with the same performance, you can take that DI guitar signal alongside the original amp signal that you recorded and stack a different amp with a different EQ, a different amount of gain, a different sound altogether, and blend those two sounds together for a completely new type of sound. It's important to note that that's different than double tracking, because double tracking is two different performances. And in those different performances, there's going to be slight differences and idiosyncrasies in your playing, which is going to completely change the sound and give it a little bit bigger sound. Reamping with a second guitar amp is going to be the exact same performance, just with a different sound, which allows you to blend the two together. Now, in order to reamp, we're going to need a few things. First is a guitar and an amp and a signal chain. So that's a microphone, a recording interface, and a DAW. The next thing you're going to need is what's called a ReAmp box, which is what I have here. This one is from Little Labs, and after doing some asking around, people in the know seem to think that this is the best reamp box out there. Now, in its simplest form, this reamp box takes your guitar signal and splits it to multiple paths. One goes directly out to the front end of your amp as if it was not even here. The next path is splitting your guitar's DI signal and sending it straight into your recording interface and into your DAW. It's basically picking off your guitar signal before it hits your guitar amp so that you have something, you have a clean DI track to send to a different amp at a later time. So before we get into reamping, I'm going to start with the signal chain. The guitar I'm using is a Fender Vintera Telecaster. It's a 70s Tele Deluxe. And from there, I'm going into my pedal board, my studio pedal board. Then I'm taking the output of the pedal board and going into the Little Labs reamp box. I put the reamp box after the pedal board so that any effects that I might use, reverbs, overdrives, delays, fuzzes, are getting sent through the DI signal into my DAW. You don't have to do this way. You could put the reamp box before the pedal board. The thing this would change is you wouldn't be committing to your effects. You could essentially reamp your effects as well. Then out of the ReAmp box, we're going into the 57 Custom Tweed Deluxe from Fender, and we're miking that up with a Sennheiser MD 421. The MD 421 is one of my favorite mics of all time, and I love using it for this type of Fender Telecaster Tweed amp edge of breakup sound. I love this mic. I've owned a pair of these for years. They're some of the most useful mics you can have in your studio, whether you're recording guitars or bass amps or drums. They're really popular on drum mics as toms, for example. They sound great on vocals. I love the MD 421s. They're classics for a reason. From the mic, I'm going into my Universal Audio Apollo X4, and that's sending the mic'd signal along with the DI guitar signal from the ReAmp box into my DAW, which is Luna. So now we're going to set up to ReAmp. I've got my performances down, and remember, the ReAmp box split my signal. So not only did it record this amp, my Tweed Deluxe, but it also recorded a DI. So at this point in the recording process, my performance is done. I've got the takes that I wanted, the parts that I wanted, but maybe the tone needs to change. So what I'm going to do is swap the Tweed Deluxe out for this high watt on top of the Dumble 112 or the Amp Nation 112. And everything else is gonna stay the same. The performance is gonna stay the same, signal chain is gonna stay the same. The only thing that's changing is the amp. Okay, so now we're set up to reamp the high watt. As you can see, I've got my guitar DI track here, and I've muted the Tweed amp. So now we're gonna hear the exact same performance just through the high watt. So here's the thing, reamping is great, and it's a nice tool to have in your tool belt, but I never reamp guitars. There's a few reasons why. First of all, it's sort of a workflow thing. Whenever I'm recording or producing something or writing something, I personally find my best results when I commit to something, which is I come up with an idea, I dial in a tone, I put it down, and when I'm happy with a particular take, I put a pin in it and say, that's it, that's done. I'm committing to that sound, I'm committing to that part, and I'm moving on to the next thing. Reamping is great because it gives you options, right? You can always revisit, go back and change the tone, go through a different amp, try different effects. But with that is a bit of a catch. Perfect can become the enemy of good. And I think it's more important for me to get something done and finished and completed than it is to sit and tweak and try and find the exact perfect tone and try different amp and mic and effect combinations. You can really just lose a lot of time that way. And one thing I see a lot of people talking about when it comes to reamping is it allows you to focus on your performance and then work on your tone and your sound later. And I actually have a pretty big problem with that. To me, the tone
tone and the sound should inform what you play. It should inform the performance. In my mind, they're one and the same. They're not two different things to work on separately. I'm going through and reamping these parts right now, and I'm not actually playing them. I'm detached from the performance. It's something I performed earlier, and I'm playing a completely different tone. And the reality is, if I was playing this sound through this amp currently through my high watt, I might play it differently. In fact, I know I would play it differently. This amp feels and sounds and responds completely differently than my Tweed amp does. And personally, I think that's a really important thing. I think your sound should inform the performance, and your performance should inform the sound. They are one and the same, and they should work together. That amp is loud. The other part of reamping that I don't particularly enjoy is the fact that it's more time spent in the studio. It takes time to set up a system like this. It takes time to set up a different amp and rig and mic combination and to go through different combinations. And if you've worked in studios before or you've produced sessions, you know that like anything else, time is money. So in my mind, this is time that could be spent doing other things, writing something new, getting further along in the song or the album, whatever you happen to be working on. This goes back to my earlier point of commitment. Personally, I think committing to a sound in the moment is important for me, and that's how I choose to work. Now, there are some instances in which I think reamping is a good thing and can be useful, but personally, I almost never do it. Okay, so we were just listening to the two different amps, the Tweed versus the high watt. And in theory, I know that, yeah, it's a different amp, it's a different speaker, different cabinet, everything about that rig is different, so it should sound different. But when you actually A/B the two together, it really highlights the complete tonal differences between something like a Tweed Deluxe and a high watt 18 watt amp. And this makes me think about that whole idea of tone being in the fingers, right? Oh, well, the tone is in the hands. And yes, that is true. The way you approach playing the guitar influences the sound and the tone. But hopefully this should highlight for you that it's not just your hands, it's not just the fingers that make the sound. It's also the gear you're using, the amps, the speakers, the pedals, the guitar. It all has an influence. At least that's how it is for me. But I want to know your thoughts on reamping. Is this something that you do a lot or you're new to, you're thinking about doing? Let me know in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Once again, huge thanks to Sweetwater for sponsoring today's episode. I'm gonna have the links to the gear that I used in today's video, like the Little Labs reamp box and my microphone and guitar, all in the description box down below. Those are affiliate links. So if you buy something through one of those links, I earn a small commission, which allows me to continue to make these videos. So thank you for that. If you want to learn more, I've got a video course dedicated to the ins and outs of great guitar tone called the Tone course I made last year. There's also two other video courses down there called Fretboard Fundamentals and the Nashville Number System course. So if you'd like to support the channel there, you can check out a video course or sign up for the Inner Circle and get access to all the video courses, as well as our monthly Inner Circle live hangs. That's all linked down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.